Hello and welcome to this Ask Us Anything about swapping your Sohar home, what landlords like Sohar call mutual exchanges. Just for a bit of context, this is the fifth Ask Us Anything session in the past year. So far we've had, and I've got to consult my notes here, estates, Sohar response, energy saving and home ownership. And today we're focusing on mutual exchange. Our next session will be Ask Us Anything about neighbourhoods. So keep an eye on that if it's something that you're interested in. We'd love you to join us. The reason we started Ask Us Anything sessions is that colleagues across Sohar often tell us they get lots of questions from residents about a particular topic. It made us wonder whether there are other people who'd like those answers too. So these sessions give us a chance to share information more widely. While we're on the subject, if you are a resident who is watching the recording of this on YouTube and there's something about the way that Sohar works that you'd like us to explain more clearly, do leave a comment below. We'd love to hear from you and we'll be happy to pick up your suggestion. Anyway, let's start with some introductions. I'm Liz and I work in the communications team at Sohar. I'm joined by Paige, little wave, and she's also part of the communications team, and by our two mutual exchange experts here at Sohar, Emma and Molly. Emma is our letting services manager, so she has oversight of everything involved in letting our homes through whatever means, while Molly is the person residents will most often speak to about mutual exchanges because she looks after these on a day-to-day basis. We've already got a few questions lined up for Emma and Molly, but before we get started, it would be great if you would set the scene for us, Emma or Molly. Perhaps one of you would like to give us a quick introduction to mutual exchange, explain what it's all about. Is it something that a lot of people do? How many have you had in the last few months? And so on. Over to you.
Perfect. Emma, are you happy for me to start? Perfect. So stereotypically, I would say mutual exchanges are a quicker way to help find a home for you. I would say you're not waiting typically as long as you would on choice-based lettings. Mutual exchanges are tenant-led, so essentially you find your own property and we just help assist to be able to get the outcome that everybody wants. From April to June, I believe, is probably one of our busiest months, and we had up to 50 applications come in. The way in which a mutual exchange process works is residents go find their desired property. They use websites that can be really helpful, such as Homeswapper. People often look on places such as Facebook groups to be able to find properties that they wish to look to move into in specific areas, that sort of thing. Once they've found somebody that they would like to swap with, they normally beforehand will go and view the property amongst themselves, and if they're happy with it, then they will submit an application. So we're not actually affiliated with Homeswapper. So anything that anybody does submit via the Homeswapper page, we will not receive notification of it. So it is really important that residents do phone their landlord or look on their website, speak to our customer service team, and essentially find out how it is they can start the process, just to make sure that nobody gets forgotten or anything like that. Way that mutual exchanges works is we have a 42-day legal deadline to decide whether or not the exchange can go ahead. And this doesn't mean that they'll be moving before that date. It's just an opportunity for us to give a yes or no definitive answer as to whether we would allow it to go ahead. Once that's been carried out and we've received every party's initial application, so for instance, if it's a three-way mutual exchange, we would need all three parties involved to submit an application. Without all of three of those, we wouldn't be able to start the process. But once we have received those, they will receive just like a generic email saying thank you for your application, and it gives them like a step-by-step guide of what to expect. This can also be found on our website in case anybody forgets or can't find the initial email. So first step initially is we just do a couple of internal checks on our residents. We check for things such as antisocial behaviour, rent arrears, make sure that there's no court orders in place, those types of things. So if residents who do have rent arrears, it gives them enough time within that 42-day process to try and get those cleared and rectified. Once that's been done, we will then arrange for the technical officers to go out and do a property inspection on our property. It is best if both tenants are present at the initial property inspection process, just so that way they have a clearer idea of things we do and will not do as part of a mutual exchange. Mutual exchanges are typically granted on the basis, basically, the property is taken as seen. So we won't be doing any sort of major works or decorative works to the property. If the technical officer turned up to the property inspection, for example, and noticed a leaking tap, that is something that we would change and rectify, make sure we get sorted before the exchange goes ahead. But anything essentially cosmetic, we would have no involvement in. The properties do take it essentially like for like. Once that's been done, ordinarily, then we would send off our residence landlord reference and request the other parties if we haven't received it by then. Once we have all that information back, we also then will request a budget planner and a tenant information sheet. All that basically means is we're making sure that the resident can afford the property that they can move into and will be comfortable and not faced with any financial burdens. And secondly, the tenant information sheet is to get to know more about them, whether or not they need any adaptations, any special requirements to the property. And it's also a really helpful way to collect our EDI data. Once that's all been done, we then would send it off for manager approval, which essentially is just a second set of eyes to make sure that nothing's missing, and make sure that basically we've got everything we need in order to carry on with the process and start arranging moving dates and everything. So once all landlords have approved the exchange, only then can we start discussing potential moving dates. Some landlords, depending on when the forms are returned, they could have slightly different deadline dates to us. So we try our best as much as we can to give at least a minimum of 2 weeks notice to get our final gas and electrical checks booked in, make sure that we prepared all the paperwork ready for the sign up. However, that is dependent on month by month how busy exchanges are. Sometimes we may not have availability for a little bit longer, but we will always offer residents the first available appointment that we have, providing that it works with the other landlord. And then after that, it's just simply a case of doing sign up, making sure all the legal stuff is done. And that's about it in a nutshell, really, unless there's anything I've forgotten, Emma.
The only thing I was going to say is about the type of tenancy that tenants, everybody needs to have a secure or an assured tenancy and be a tenant of a housing association or a council. And then flying forward to once they've signed the legal paperwork to swap the property, you can move in once that's been done and we've got the safety checks booked in. So the majority of the time when we are busy, people will be waiting maybe 8 weeks from the date that they've submitted the forms to actually moving. So it's still quicker than choice-based lettings or any other option at the moment. So 8 weeks is not bad. I think it's still quicker than buying a home.
Mm-hmm. And submitting the forms means that you've accepted the form that's gone through the website, yeah? Because presumably
the website
if people,
or the app, yeah.
Or the app, okay. Yeah. If people have not been able to complete it in full, is that still the start date because you go back to them asking for more information, or is it only when it's absolutely watertight, all the information?
Yeah. So all of the forms for every party involved in the swap needs to be completed in full. Right. We need to have all of those details. And if anyone obviously has any queries, they can contact us at Sohar. But all the information is on our website.
Lovely. A very trivial question. You talked about a 3-way exchange, Molly. What's the biggest way exchange you've ever done?
Biggest exchange I've ever done today is 5. It did originally start off as a 9-way, but one of the other landlords refused it. It then went down to an 8, and then it ended up as a 5. So yeah, that's the biggest one I've had to deal with at the moment.
Feels like you should get danger money for doing that.
It's a big headache, that's for sure. Yeah.
So we might as well turn to the questions that we've got. And the first one is about that kind of limbo area between finishing with your current landlord and coming to Sohar or Sohar to Sohar. And it is, I'm on universal credit and I don't have the money to pay the rent in advance on the home I'm swapping into. What happens then?
So there's a few different things which people can do. I mean, the 42 days gives them a little bit of leeway to sort of start gathering that money and preparing for it anyway, I would say. As part of our policy, it does state that you need to provide a one month's rent in advance, and that applies whether you are on universal credit or housing benefit. What I would say is possibly speak to universal credit. Some people are eligible for things like a discretionary housing payment, or you can ask for, I believe it's called an advance payment, which can help with covering the first month's rent in advance. People that are in Sohar to Sohar properties, if they're downsizing, we do offer an incentive. So if they don't have enough of the first month's rent in advance, let's say they're in a 3-bed property, they can't afford it anymore because all the kids have moved out and they're paying bedroom tax. That's a really good way of using that first month's rent in advance to help with property that they're looking to move into. I've known other people in the past to seek help from local charities. Sometimes they're willing to help with paying the first month's rent in advance, or if not, can help residents, I guess, with moving costs and stuff to take a bit of that financial pressure off, so that way they can afford to move. I don't know if there's anything else there, Emma, that you could add.
Yeah, we can. Based on universal credit having an assessment date and the same payment date each month, we can look at making sure that the signing of the legal documents and the new tenancy start date to coincide with your universal credit payment date. So there are ways that we can help you to help us to make sure your tenancy starts off on the right foot.
Fantastic. Next question. I'm in a 1-bed flat, but I really want a 2-bed. What are my chances of getting one through Homeswapper? And I think want is the operative word there.
So we have to look at your circumstances as to why you need or want a 2-bed. We also have to look at affordability side of things. So if you're going to be bedroom taxed, if you're on benefits, what the need is for the 2-bed. If it's because you have disabilities and you need a carer, then there's an option there if you're entitled to the right benefits that we would be allowing you to move to a 2-bed. But it's based on personal circumstances and if you can afford the rent, if you're on benefits and whether you'd be bedroom taxed or not.
But the principle is that it is swapping like for like unless there are any extenuating circumstances.
Yeah, I mean, we do have families and single people that upsize for whatever reason, and we look at it on a case-by-case basis. Same thing as, they might only be entitled to a 2-bed, but they've got 2 children and they want to move into a 3-bed. We have to look at a case-by-case basis on affordability. And also the reasons why you need to move. It works the same if you are downsizing. It might be that you're moving from a 3-bed and you want to move to a 2-bed, but you still only have a 1-bed need. We can allow that because you're still downsizing, so you're still making your situation better and releasing a family-sized home.
So the next question has kind of been answered already by Molly in terms of saying that you take a property as seen, but I think it's worth going over again, revisiting, because it's what happens if I move into a home that's been left in a dreadful state. Surely, if your tenant has left it in a dreadful state, you must surely help me get rid of rubbish, redecorate or what have you. Then are there circumstances at all when we would do that?
I would say we have a pretty thorough disclaimer that is quite repetitive, but that's one of the main reasons we do it, to basically say to residents, the whole point in a mutual exchange is it's a mutual agreement. I guess there should be mutual respect between each other. I think it's almost common courtesy that you should leave it in a clean state. When the technical officers go and do their property inspections, they do advise residents to leave all properties clean and clear. The residents will sign essentially like an inspection form saying that they understand the terms and conditions. However, it's not something we can, I would say, enforce. It would be more of a dispute between residents. We're not there to mediate it. If they're not happy with the way that somebody has left a property, unfortunately it would be something that they would need to discuss amongst themselves. I mean, I haven't heard of it yet, but maybe it's something that they could do, go speak to citizens advice or a small claims thing. And also I think it's tenants' responsibility as much as possible leading up towards the date of the exchange to just make sure that they're in regular contact, making sure that they're regularly visiting the property. So if there is any belongings or items that are still left there and they're not happy with, that they're kind of setting those boundaries amongst each other to make sure and ensure that basically it does get done.
And I guess that by the same token, there are some tenants who move out leaving manuals for just about every appliance in the kitchen, telling you what day the bin day is. I mean, you know, there must be some who are producing almost a whole manual for the house for our people moving in.
There definitely is. And I think it's, we do encourage tenants to attend the property inspection with our technical officer and the current tenant, because then you can discuss anything that might come up during that appointment so that you know what we're going to be putting into the disclaimer. The disclaimer is purely to show you that the items that are listed in this paperwork are your responsibility. You can't be asking Sohar to replace a shed if the shed collapses at some point. The tenant has left that shed for you. So you need to look and consider about fixtures and fittings that are non-standard. Things like different flooring in the kitchen, different light fittings in the sitting room, if there's a conservatory on the side of the sheds, decking, things like that, because you're taking on the ownership and the responsibility of those items. So it is really important that you do kind of take note about those type of fixtures and fittings in the property.
If residents are also unsure of things that we will and will not do, on our website there's a repair responsibilities page which can be really helpful, and it's got a list of things that we will and won't do, so that could also help give them a bit of a clearer idea.
Great. I suppose some of this, some of what you might be looking out for, kind of unusual features like the conservatory or the decking or something that you've mentioned, Emma, might be in the ad that somebody's put in Homeswapper, so you've already got a sense of what might be extra amenities, as it were, in the property. How much help would Sohar, or indeed any landlord, give somebody in getting through the Homeswapper process? Do you give hints and tips about how to make your home look more attractive? Do you can people use our reception computers, for example, to do Homeswapper? To what extent are people completely left on their own to find their perfect match and to get it moving?
Residents, Sohar tenants and other residents can register on Homeswapper. There is a charge. However, if you're a Sohar tenant, you can, if you state that you're a Sohar tenant, we get an email to approve your application, which means it's free. So it's always good to list who your landlord is. But the adverts themselves are written by residents. We can by all means help. We can arrange for you to come into the office or to have a Teams call to go through and to help you. We can also kind of log on to Homeswapper ourselves and have a look at the adverts and then kind of give you advice. I mean, for example, there's going to be lots of information in the next home talk that's coming out. So it's good to have a look at that. But from a take photos. Everybody wants to have a look at a photo from the outside, if nothing else. So make sure that you take a nice photo with nice weather, rather than a
easier
snowy
said
picture.
than done.
Yeah. But show the best parts of your property. If you're going to take internal photos, declutter, tidy up. Don't worry about dust, but just make sure that your cushions in the sitting room are fluffed up. The curtains are open. And people can see how beautiful your sitting room is. Same with your kitchen and your bathroom. If you've got 2 bathrooms, then do state that there's 2 bathrooms. If you've got any disabled adaptations, please do state those as well, because there are people needing those modifications that are looking to swap. Take a photo of your garden, cut the grass first. Doesn't need to be landscaped, but just make it look that it's easy to maintain and manage. But again, give us a call if if anyone has any queries. We're here to help.
I wonder if anything that's come up in the questions that we've just had, and there were 4 quite meaty ones there, makes you think that there's something else you need to tell us about mutual exchange, assuming that those who are watching know nothing about it, or even just helping people finesse their applications. Anything else you want to add?
I don't think there's anything specifically that I want to add. I do think the mutual exchanges are a great way of moving, but they do take time. They are quick, but they still take time. So, throughout the process, we will be in contact with you, but there will be times when there is nothing to sort of update you with. And if there is another housing association or council involved, we can still make our decision within the 42 days. But depending on when you've got their forms into them, it might be a different deadline date. So you need to kind of try and coordinate it all to be delivered on the same day, so that our target dates, our deadline dates are the same. Because otherwise we could make our decision in 42 days, but you could be waiting longer for the other housing association to make their decision, and their policy and their process may be slightly different to ours. So it's always good to make sure that you know what's happening and when.
And is there any more inherent risk in going it alone and not via Homeswapper and doing it on Facebook or something?
No, we're more than welcome to not use Homeswapper. You can, as Molly has already said, you could be having a conversation in the village shop about someone that wants to swap. It could be a friend, it could be a family member, it could be somebody you know or somebody you don't know. Obviously, when you're doing a viewing or you're going to visit that person, make sure that you're comfortable and you're safe. But it doesn't have to be somebody through the Homeswapper website. It can be through other means.
So doing that form is it?
Yeah.
Regardless of how you get to the state where you're both in a position to fill in a form.
Yeah. So we've
all 9 of you are, Molly.
Yes. So the website, our website, if you're a Sohar tenant already, then you can also use the My Sohar app, or simply have a postal form.
Fabulous.
One thing that I would say also, maybe in addition to just based around property inspections and things like that, try and report any repairs before looking to start the process, just because it can speed things along. I mean, if a technical officer goes out to a property, let's say, for example, and he or she spots quite bad mold and damp, that could cause delays with the exchange, and it could impact on our decision within the 42 days. We could potentially give something, let's say if it's like a major job that needed to be done, or something that's going to take a bit of time, we could give what's called conditional consent, basically saying, on the grounds and the basis that we get X, Y, and Z done and rectified, then we're happy for the exchange to go ahead as everything else is okay. And that's the only factor stopping it. So I would just say any sort of repairs, report as soon as you can, just to avoid any sort of impact or delay in our decision, basically.
Great, thank you. If you had to sum up why mutual exchange is so good, on one sentence, on a postcard, in an elevator?
I would say just see, that you're doing something good for somebody else, and seeing seeing them move into a property where they're genuinely excited and it's somewhere that's going to benefit them is the most rewarding part, I think.
Lovely. Well done. I don't think there are any more questions coming in, and we've heard an awful lot from both Molly and Emma, particularly Molly. Thank you very much indeed for giving up your time. I don't know if anybody realises if you're watching the recording, but these things take place in the evening to encourage as many residents as possible to take part. So thank you very much for giving up your evening for this, and we look forward to seeing everybody on the next Ask Us Anything. Bye-bye.